Hello everyone. I'm so happy I'm finally getting another speed paint video out for y'all. It's been a long time. I only filmed the coloring process of this, but I hope you enjoy watching regardless as I yap away. I believe the topic of choice today is talking about my two OC's fashion in terms of how I choose to design their wardrobes. Personally, I consider myself more as an OC haver than an artist, but I specifically enjoy designing and drawing outfits for them, especially matching ones on the art side of things. While I'm not a professional in this area, I hope you enjoy taking a peek in both my coloring process and hearing my thoughts on my OC's wardrobes. This piece in particular I drew I think like a month ago already, and it's of my OC's Florent and Hai, who I'm going to be talking about. Florent is the leggy one and Hai is the one with the cunty bob. As a brief summary, Hai is a moody, pretty irritable person who has a kind of cold, distant, or even off-putting exterior with a bit more of a fragile, sensitive, especially emotionally sensitive inner self. She's the one I would consider to have more of a complex personality, as the impression she gives off can be very different depending on context. Florent, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward. He is just like very romantic, pleasant, sensual, a kind of lovely individual. He can be a bit intense and over the top, super hyperactive and the like, but generally he's just a very lovey-dovey, romantic individual. So, it's a bit difficult to explain how I built these wardrobes, as I've had these OCs for over 15 years, like ever since I was a young kiddo. And it wasn't so much of a conscious effort. They've kind of grown with me and my interests, and a lot of my personal taste in fashion also developed, in the past 15 years, and that is found in them too. I get a lot of my inspiration not really by looking up aesthetics online like many people do, although no hate on that. I kind of just am someone who window shops a lot. I like going into stores, I like online shopping, and yeah, so that's where most of my inspiration comes from. I like to think that they both have very specific aesthetics that reflect who they are well, and I hope I can convey it to you well here. Okay, let's get into it. So before going into their individual styles, just briefly, here are the things that overlap in their fashion as they're quite similar. I really like to think of them like as a unit in terms of fashion, like their styles complement each other and are based on the same fundamentals. So one of those fundamentals is the predominant colors. So they use a lot of pink, black, and white, with red making an occasional appearance. This is not really a coincidence, it's just like exactly my wardrobe in real life. Both have styles that, in my opinion, lean feminine, and they incorporate a lot of similar elements, such as heart motifs or bows, but maybe not in the same ways. And yeah, that's what I'd consider to be like the basis of both of their styles. Alright, I'm gonna talk about Hai's style first. Hai's wardrobe has one main defining trait, and it is not being cunty or being pink or whatever. It is literally just the contrast between harsh and soft. There are several things that feed into this trait, such as color, textiles, and accessories, so I'll go through them one by one. Color is the most obvious one. Soft colors like pink and white are often paired with something bolder or stronger like black. But it's not just that, it can be like a pastel pink and a bold pink together as well. This is something you can see in most of my art of her, as you can see right now, like as I'm drawing. She's literally in those colors, right? The important thing isn't that they are used in isolation, but rather that they are used in combination. Actually, side note, I recently learned that I'm very muted and gray toned, and because of that, pink and white, like soft contrast, works better than high contrast, like pink and black on me, which is what I used to wear all the time. And because of that, it made me think about Hai a bit. And I really think she must be someone who has like high contrast features. And I like to think of her in that way too, like someone is like very bright. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyways, let's move on to the next point. So next, a lot of her outfits incorporate different types of textiles. Let me break it down between the soft and the harsh ones again. So soft textiles would be things like cotton or faux fur. For example, she wears a lot of fluffy fur coats and pom-pom style accessories or fluffy leg warmers, these kind of things. Harsh textiles would specifically be anything with a hard gloss to it, so think like PVC, latex, or patent leather. This could be seen in like her gloves or her boots in particular. I'll let you take a moment and take a look at the drawing that is on the screen right now and see if you can see that here, because it's quite obvious. There are also some textiles that she wears frequently, such as silk, that ride in the middle ground, as it does produce a lot of shine, but it is overall soft. But the key point is that it is shiny. The final thing that contributes to this main style trait is the use of accessories, although this does bleed into the previous 2 points. It's things like metallic silver accessories paired with soft ones like ribbons and pom-poms. Recently, too, I've been extending this into like metallic silver textiles as well. I drew her in like this bathing suit with like silver and like the pink sheer leopard print. You'll see it on screen. I think it was really cute, and I think that's how I would like to move forward with her style as well. Again, what matters here is not that she wears one thing or the other, this or that color, or uses any type of accessory, or even that there's a balance in everything. It's more that these details are all in close proximity of each other, either being layered or paired up. For example, her most typical outfit is a fluffy fur coat with latex gloves worn under. This is pushed further when usually the coat is white or pastel pink in color, but the gloves are black or red or something like that. Another example that you can see in this drawing right now is still with the fur coat, but it has like those chains over it, so it creates a bit of like a harshness right over, like on top of the fur, if that makes sense. I feel this harsh, soft contrast is especially defining for her because it matches her personality really well. She looks soft, but is also not really approachable, like she wants you to keep her distance a bit. She has this kind of hard, cold exterior, but is also very sensitive inside, like I said. Although a lot of the work in making her look cold and disinterested when drawing her comes down to like her facial expression or pose, I feel like her fashion also adds in conveying this aspect of her, in addition to just looking like super cunty, right? So yeah, the harsh soft contrast is the major defining trait of her wardrobe, but it is supported by a lot of other recurring key elements. First, the cut of her clothing is often quite revealing. She often wears like these short dresses or short skirts, and her chest is almost always exposed to a certain extent because that's why I like drawing. Yeah, everyone knows that. Likewise, if wearing anything at her neck, like a necklace or something, it's always something like a choker just to keep the bust area clear. Like that area, nothing's there. The second thing is her tendency to wear gloves. This is mostly because I really love how gloves, especially long gloves, look, but I think this is another detail that I feel contributes to making her look closed off to others. It creates a bit of emotional distance in a way, like she rarely makes physical contact by hand with people, you know? Like she's not open to exchange. Additionally, she is also a germaphobe, which I think makes the gloves really suitable for her. Another detail to add is just the lean towards lingerie or lingerie inspired articles of clothing. For example, her favorite dress is just like a silk slip dress, and a lot of her dresses are just like styled over these kind of things. Similarly, I like using corset pieces with her or using very visible garters and stockings, or sometimes even like on top of skirts. I just think it's just like sexy, cunty, and cute, you know? The last detail I want to mention, and it feels like really obvious to me, I don't know if it's obvious to anyone else, but it's like the hair bow. She is almost always seen wearing a thin pink ribbon in her hair, and it's usually to the side on the left. I think it gives her a bit more of that girly touch. If she's not wearing it, she is usually wearing something else that may or may not also have a bow, or might just be wearing two bows straight up. There's no like character or lore reason for the ribbon to be there or anything about her personality. However, I will say that I think I like it to the left side just because it provides a bit of balance with her hair because her bangs sweep to the right. Overall, Hai's wardrobe is one I would consider simple as it only follows one major principle, and the articles of clothing she uses are pretty consistent too. She's someone who is generally trendy with fashion, who definitely likes looking quite girly, but who also has a bit of sharpness to her, like a bit of bite in her style. And that sharpness doesn't necessarily detract from the previous points, but rather complements them and her own personality as well. Now, let's take a look at Florent. So, unlike Hai, Florent does not have a main defining trait to his style. Instead, it's more of the mood his wardrobe conveys. Really often, it's elegant, pretty, and romantic, no matter what the details are incorporated into it, or even if he's dressed in like another style. We're gonna talk a bit more about that later, so put a pin in it. In order to achieve this kind of romantic mood, there are a few things that are very recurring in Florent's style. First, his clothing generally has a delicateness to it. This can mean like lace detailing, lace patterns, or a certain sheerness to the textiles he's using, or something even a bit silky. If there's anything shiny, the shine, unlike with like Hai's clothing, is often very soft. This is where they can have some overlap in textiles such as silk. Another thing is that the textiles he uses often have a lot of flow, no pun intended, and movement to it. So think of like those really puffy sleeves, or perhaps like a shirt that drapes really well over his chest, you know, that kind of thing. There's always some sort of excess fabric that creates this kind of draping look on him. He always looks like his clothing is comfortable and elegant at the same time. Like if the wind blew, you would see his sleeves billow and like flutter kind of vibe, and he would have his delicate lace and etc. It's like very romantic, right? The next point is pretty obvious, but flowers are often present in his wardrobe in one way or another. This is usually just simple, basic flowers in his hair to evoke a bit of a like Like either the vibe of him having laid down in a field of flowers or him having spent a while placing them in and never taking them off. Another area I often use flowers for him are in accessories like earrings or necklaces, brooches, hats, or even just like he's straight up holding one. Accessories for Flo lean more on the ornate side compared to Hai, but are not limited to this. You'll see much more like gold and curviness to his jewelry. For example, even his belt buckles might have a more interesting or intricate design than Hai's, or he may include more things like rings and necklaces with gems on them in his outfits. A final thing that I'm still thinking about, honestly, like I can't tell if it's a coincidence or something that I do want to incorporate. Like I said, none of this is actually complete, it's like a work in progress that's evolving. Is maybe Florent has more focus on his waist. Think of like how the harnesses that he might wear might cut at his waist, or he has like high waisted pants, or wears corsets that highlight his waist, or even like sometimes I would imagine like crop tops that reveal his waist. Like I think that might be something that could be a bit defining for his silhouette. These are about the only things I have for him, which honestly, in contrast to Hai, is a lot more simple. I think it's just because I didn't really think about his clothing in as much detail compared to Hai back when they were first created. Like I was much more interested in like fashion for her than for him. But yeah. Do keep in mind though that all of this is including the traits he shares with Hai, like color schemes. However, Florent's wardrobe is also defined by what it isn't, not just by the included traits. And I'm going to talk about this a bit more later. I want to point out that when it comes to talking about Hai's style, I often say she more or less always wears these kind of things. There's that always that bit of a contrast or whatever. But for Florent, it's more like often or generally. And the reason for that is that Florent as a person is much more influenceable than Hai is. This means that his style is much more flexible than hers because he is happy to lean towards her style more as opposed to her leaning towards him. So sometimes elements of Hai's taste can be seen very evidently in his outfit. For example, wearing harnesses is something I would consider as a suggestion of Hai's, not one that he would reach on his own. In a lot of outfits I design as matching casual outfits, there will be a lot more of Hai's influence than there is Florent's. Specifically, the drawing I'm showing you on the screen right now, these little angel devil outfits as I call them, it's a really good instance of this. He's in this like full latex outfit, which I hope you can imagine was like entirely Hai's idea or something that she bought for him. And that's like the other thing. I like the idea that if you pay attention to what my OCs wear, you can tell if the other one bought or suggested something for the other. They have very similar styles, but I feel there are enough individually defining traits to make it visible to those paying attention. Like if Hai is in a pink sundress with a little floral print and lace, although it's not too different from her wearing any other dress, it does give like Florent bought this vibes, you know? Let me go back to the fits you see me coloring right now. So like even if Hai's influence on Florent is usually very strong fashion-wise, I always make sure to tailor it to his taste too. For example, here I included the ballerina style ribbons crisscrossing up his pants, the little flowers in his hair, or even the flowy neck ribbon that is something that she would not wear, you know? Like his neck ribbon is not the same as the ribbon that she wears in her hair. I think that's what I like the most about coming up with matching outfits, keeping a bit of a consistent theme or letting one or the other influence each other, but still making it fit both their individual styles. You might also be wondering, like, when your OCs dress so similarly, how do you differentiate them? And that's something I consider now and then, especially when making those matching outfits. Of course, everything I said previously about their wardrobe applies, but I do have a few other details to point out, notably the things that Florent's style isn't. So this is the biggest one really, it's that Florent never wears fur or anything relatively fluffy. This is exclusively something that Hai wears. While she is overloaded with fluffy items, he is strictly like without any. I think there might have been like one or two times I drew him with like a fluffy like bunny hats kind of thing, but those are like really exceptions where it's kind of like almost a costume and not part of his actual style. On a mildly related note, it often means that Hai's silhouette varies a lot from his. She tends to have a lot more weight on her upper body thanks to things like the big fluffy coat, usually leaving her lower body like with less weight. Florent has this silhouette a bit more balanced out. Like when he wears a coat, it isn't cropped, it's usually long and reaches his legs, or at least past his hips, right? And it creates a bit of a larger but more full-bodied silhouette. Another thing I've been testing out is like, I think maybe wide pants or bell bottoms may look good on him to balance out the width of his like shoulders. He's much more harmonious generally, while on the other hand, Hai has balance but with much more contrast than him, which is quite typical of her fashion and her personality. The final one is specifically more about the vibe than anything else. It might even be about how they choose to wear the clothing that they're wearing. I try my best with their style traits combined to create a vibe that's specific to them. Like I said, Florent will always look very lovely and romantic. And specifically in AUs, he might even look melancholic, right? While Hai has a sharp and cuter vibe instead. So yeah, I think that's quite enough yapping from me. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the basics of my OC's wardrobes, and perhaps you can see the vision a bit more, or maybe like got inspired to define wardrobes for your own OCs. I can definitely go into more detail on this because I have many outfits and designs for them, from like general matching outfits and concepts to like full-blown AU designs. Let me know if that's something you'd like to hear about, as I definitely want to try and post more art speed paints for people who follow me for that, as well as talk more about my OCs as they're one of my biggest personal interests. If you have anything to share or ask, please don't hesitate to do so in the comments. I'll see you soon. Bye!